Skinnamarink dinky dink, skinnamarink doo. I love you too. Boop boop be doo. Mwah.
Get into right off the hop, like we've had other children's entertainment act on. We've had like Splash and Boots. We've had Sunshine and Broccoli, Jeremy Fisher, and they basically have said, you know, like Sharon, Lois and Bram really is where they get a lot of their inspiration from, and kind of how they got into, I guess, children's entertainment. Of course, there's Fred Penner as well, and I will always tell them, you don't need to tell me. I am already a bot customer. I am from Newfoundland originally, so like, you know, waking up in the morning when I was 5 and 6, watching my parents get ready to go to work, it's like NTV would come on, and I think it's like clockwork. 7:30, it would be the Addams Family. We'd get a couple like, you know, Newfoundland acts that would come on, which is kind of interesting because we've had them on recently. But right before then, if I was lucky enough, or as my parents would say, unlucky on their end, to be up at like 6 or 6:30, it was like, how do we get Brian to just be quiet, like leave us alone? Oh, I have an idea. Let's put on Sharon, Lois and Bram. And that was it. They're like, we're going to sneak off to work. Someone else is going to take care of you when they get up. But for at least a good solid 30 minutes, we know that he is content. So I'm sure if my parents were on this as well, they'd be saying, oh my God, thank you. Thank you for letting him leave us alone.
That's very nice. Well, we know we were babysitters for a lot of people. And by the way, just to be clear, we never describe ourselves as performers for children. We say it's family entertainment because one of the reasons, I believe, one of the reasons that we were successful as much as we were is because the parents didn't run screaming from the room. The music was good, the quality of the music, the arrangements, it was all intended to speak to a whole family.
No, and that's fair. I was just looking at it from the standpoint of like, so when I was a child, I call it children's entertainment, but you're right. Like it is
sure.
family friendly.
Absolutely.
I do want to get into just right off the hop, because when I mentioned about the other acts that kind of put you over or give you these kind remarks, it's like, you know, you have teamed up with Splash and Boots. I've seen recently that they've posted some clips with you and Bram doing some work. And, you know, it's interesting to me because when I was doing a little bit of history on how you guys came to be, as a 6-year-old, you're not doing the research. You're just entertained. When you get older, right, you want to know this stuff. But like when we had them on, they were talking about the obstacles of putting out so many CDs and pitching their TV show, and it was just not coming to be. And I asked them, like, was there ever a standpoint where like, it's not coming, we're just going to give up? And they said, no, we knew we had something. And it's interesting because even when we had Hal Johnson on from Body Break, he mentioned the same thing and about borrowing money. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, like to borrow money from a friend or family almost to this day. It's like, do you have $5? You got $10? It's like, sure. But in your case, it was like, do you got, I think it was like 20,000 or something of that nature. And from friends and family, I mean, who in this mindset would be like, here you go out and make a CD? But I guess they really believed in you, or you felt the same way as these, like the modern day feel is, we have something, so let's go get it.
I would say that it was more a matter of the support. That was not that we thought, oh, we've got something. We simply wanted to make a record, a really good record. And enough people who were connected to us one way or the other, either family or friends, believed in what we were doing and were happy to give us, it wasn't $5 or $10, it was $500 or $1,000. And the fact is they all got it all back very, very quickly.
And then
we didn't know that would, and then some, exactly. We didn't know that would happen, but it certainly did, which gave us a lot of pleasure.
Yeah, because I think it's interesting. Like, I want to mention, did they ever come to you and was like, remember how you owed us, or like you gave us, or we gave you this money? Yeah, like we want that back, but we know what you're making, so a little bit of interest on the side. Did they ever come to you like that?
No, they got paid back right away, and they earned additional on top of it. I mean, it was when Sharon, Lois and Bram borrowed money for that record, they thought they were borrowing money to make one record and go back to their respective careers. The first pressing of the record sold out instantly, and the investors were paid back within 3 months of the money being borrowed to finance the record. And then they continued to get profits after that. So they thought they were giving money. They didn't think they were lending money. They never expected to get it back, and they didn't expect to get it back with interest. And everyone who was attached to that has been able to say how proud they were to help Sharon, Lois and Bram get their start, to be connected to such a hugely successful triple platinum award-winning record.
And just for those who are not familiar, because I know when we do post this video up, there are going to be people that are going to be wondering, like, of course they know who Sharon is, but just for those who are wondering, like, explain your relationship to Sharon.
Sure. So I'm her daughter, and I have been watching their career unfold for the last 43 years. I sat in the kitchen with her and taught her songs that are on the first record. I have managed Sharon and Bram, and I manage Elephant Records and do all of their special projects. And I am the author of all of the additional lyrics on their very successful Skinamarink book, and the next 2 book projects that we are working on for Sharon, Lois and Bram right now. And I have the honor now of singing and collaborating with my mother on Skinamarink with Sharon and Randi. And we've been doing virtual concerts since the pandemic started.
So
I'm the proud mother.
I guess, Randi, like, just to toss you a question here, but, like, you know, when you're growing up, of course, like I'm 29 now. I don't want to get too much into it. Just turned it actually not too long ago, but it's like I look at it from my standpoint is, you know, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old watching these, you don't realize until you get older, like, oh, like this is Canadian, or this is like in our own backyard per se. So it just made me more impressed, and then to see them get like the Order of Canada. To get an honorary doctorate degree from Mount Vincent, which is just a province over, right? So, like, when you're young, like, you know, watching your parents do this or your mom, what's going through your mind?
Well, you know, both my parents were musicians and performers on stage. So for my whole life, watching them from backstage and sometimes joining them on stage, that was just part of my normal. So I just took it for granted that this was, you know, a perfectly normal experience. I was always immensely proud of both of my parents, and I was always involved in Sharon, Lois and Bram, either looking for songs and sharing songs with them that I had found, or selling records, or sometimes being the elephant. You know, I worked in their office. I just, you know, I was so proud of what they were doing. I wanted to be a part of it.
And by the way, Randi's dad, my husband, Joe, my late husband, he was a member of the Travelers, a Canadian folk music group that traveled and worked in Canada and beyond for many, many, many years. And he also was hugely involved in the beginning of in helping us launch. He did a lot of arrangements, musical arrangements for us, particularly vocal arrangements. Some of our most interesting and challenging vocal arrangements came from Joe. So it was we had a musical household for sure.
I think it's interesting, like, to me. So again, I'll bring it up because I'm just fascinated by it. Because when you're younger, you'll turn on a TV show or whatever just to keep you entertained or just keep you distracted. Now, I did have the actual disc in my closet, but I had it, let's put it this way, I did have it. And then when I had a niece and nephew that came over when they were younger, they have now taken it. And I thought I still had it, but apparently it's still down to their house.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. It's still being in use.
That's good.
But I remember my brothers. I had two other brothers that were just annoyed of always hearing the Skinamarink or anything. And they're older. They're like 10 and 12 years older. So I get it. I understand it. But as a kid, you're like, no, I want to watch it. So you got to deal with it. But yeah, they gave it to me as a Christmas gift a few years ago, and they thought it was like hilarious. So like, you used to drive us nuts with this. And it was just, ironically enough, I think you guys were in Ottawa that year doing a tour, and I think you were going to Newfoundland as well. And I think at both times I was reaching out, and I think the Ottawa one I missed by a few days. And then when you got to Newfoundland, I think there was just a scheduling issue, but I was like, they were literally in both of my backyards, and probably like a bus trip away. And
you don't sound like a Newfoundlander.
Oh,
I mean, I can sound like a Newfoundlander if he wants me to bring out the accent.
I hear it.
There you go.
I don't hear it. We went many times to Newfoundland. Loved Newfoundland. Loved going there.
Did you ever get screeched in?
Oh yes, of course, absolutely.
It's almost like she's basically looking at me like, you're supposed to be a Newfoundlander. What are you talking about? Of course we do that. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to get back to like just the beginning of how this all came to be, because I want to mention, like, just explain to me how the three of you met, how it more or less became this idea of we're going to do music, like family-friendly music. Just explain all that to me.
So Bram and I were both involved in the folk music community in Toronto when we were teenagers. There was a big coffee house movement in Toronto. It was very, very successful. So we were both singing around the coffee house movement. Then later when I was doing music for children almost from the beginning, and I made a record with a French Canadian and Michel Choquette. And after I was married and started having family, I met, actually it was after both kids. Randy has a brother as well, and it was after Jeffrey was born. I met Lois. I was doing a program called Mariposa in the schools, and Bram was also involved in that program, where we went into schools for a day at a time and did 4 or 5 workshops singing with classrooms of children. And a great opportunity and learning experience for us. And Lois was doing a program called Music for Children in the Library. And we met through a mutual friend who knew that we were both working with children and thought we should know each other. And so we became friends and colleagues at that point. And along the way, we decided that we wanted to make a record. We were going to make a record with Mariposa in the schools, and that got sort of delayed. And Bill Usher, who was the producer, said, well, why don't we make a record? And so we decided to make a record. We didn't decide to start a career, but simply to make one record.
Yeah.
And it was really the response to the record, One Elephant, Deux Elephants, that launched a long and successful, surprising career for us.
I like that answer, but the thing that I kind of like about the dynamic now, of course, when you're on stage, you're all getting along. When you're writing songs, of course, there is some give and take, but in my mind, and I mean this with no disrespect, this is just my kind of mindset or imagination, but like when I look at the group, I'm thinking almost like a Golden Girls kind of concept, where it's like she's the Dorothy and you're like the Betty White. There are some times where it's like when you look back at this, it's like you're happy-go-lucky, but I feel like she's, and I could be wrong, but I feel like the Chicago background, a little bit of she just seems like she'd be the one that's like, no, we have to do it this way. We have to keep in line. Like, I want everything done this way. It's like, well, can you kind of give and take? And she's just still like, yeah,
no.
I have to be in charge here a little bit too.
That was never like that. No, not at all. I mean, the thing is, we were 3 individuals with 3 different points of view, and we talked, and we collaborated, and sometimes, I mean, there was never any, you have to do it this way. That simply did not happen.
In addition to them being professional partners,
yeah.
they were also friends. And they didn't start when they were teenagers or in their 20s. They started after they were established people with spouses and children. And they had enduring, successful relationships. So they already knew.
We knew how to do that.
Yeah, they knew how to get along and to work through challenges. And, Lois's son continues to be one of my best friends. He's my contemporary. We grew up together. Bram and Lois were very much aunt and uncle figures to me. And, in addition to them working together, we played together. We celebrated holidays and milestones together. We vacationed together. Sharon and Bram and their spouses traveled to Africa together. There's just a deep respect and fondness that makes it possible to do what you love and to find the common ground to make things work.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
the only reason I brought that up, it was just because I was looking at it from because it's kind of interesting in the aspect of, you always have kind of, I guess, your own mindset of when you see a musical group or like a trio or anything really in life, that you're just like, okay, who's the one that at certain points takes charge? Who's the one that's a little bit more relaxed? Not like there's anything wrong with either or. It's just, to me, it's always in the back of my mind now as a person who's a little bit of a, I guess, a music buff and a journalism buff. It's well, geez, it's interesting to me to know that behind the scenes of, just say, a Backstreet Boys or something, there is one guy that takes the lead and says, you have to do this, you have to do that, or and then someone might come back and say, well, what about if we do it this way, Nick? It's oh, that's okay. But you're almost okay, so he's the guy who's a little bit gets the wheels going in motion. So that's where I was kind of getting at with that one.
Yeah. Several journalists over the years have sought to look for those cracks in the relationship, and ultimately they failed because, sometimes people just like and respect each other and get along. It's, that's
the other may be more typical, but then they may be the groups that don't last. They're together for a while and then they fall apart. But that didn't happen with us.
No, and again, I wasn't looking for a crack or anything there. It's
a fair question. It's a fair question, Tobin. It's fine.
No, it's just because to me it's just interesting because when you do see the dynamic on stage, I'm like, oh, geez, these guys are really getting along, and then sometimes you do hear of okay, there's I've never heard of anything such thing, but it's just kind of an interesting concept to me. You mentioned, of course, about Elephant Records, and I like how that ties in because essentially it was the Elephant show that you started way back, and then that kind of went into the Skinamarink show, and that I think is where I kind of got involved in watching you through the CBC program, which also I spent my days I feel like a little bit of a couch potato even when I was younger, because it's you've got Skinamarink, you've got Mr. Dress Up, Mr. Rogers. It's almost like, Brian, go out and do something. It's but why would I? Right here. And it's yeah, but there are people outside. I'm yeah, but there are people on their shows. It's I'm tired of arguing with a 7-year-old. Do what you got to do. But explain how that came to be in the aspect, because I know today, kind of relating to today, of when you see acts like Splash and Boots that have said about struggling to get on Treehouse and overcoming that obstacle, it's almost now someone can start a YouTube channel or go on TikTok and be I'm just going to sing my songs and people are going to watch me, and that creates a following. So tell me, I guess, in your own aspect of how hard that was and the changing of the times compared to today.
Well, I think we were lucky with the times. Yeah. We came around at a time when people had, there were not terrible economic times, so people could take a chance on an unknown. So I think that's what happened with our records. As far as TV, we were not looking for TV. It was not, we didn't say, oh gosh, let's do a TV series. That did not happen at all. We were approached. People came to us who wanted to do TV, and that's how we came to do it. The Elephant Show we had done some specials for CBC. Just by chance, we met the head of children's programming at an event, and she said, we've got to do something together. So several specials for CBC were born. The guys who, Arnie Sapersky and Bruce Glosson, who were the producers of The Elephant Show, came to us. They didn't have children, but they had nieces and nephews, and they'd heard about us, and they said, let's do something. So it all kind of evolved in a very natural way, and we didn't have to be out there hustling, trying to make it happen. I don't know if we would have if we'd had to, but we didn't have to.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me because it's like today when you see someone like start a YouTube channel, like, so I've got like a niece that's 8 and a nephew that's 5 and just around 5, and like just to see them, what they watch on YouTube, and I'm here doing podcasting on YouTube, and I know that's not essentially like my platform per se of what you see on content, but it's like I'll see ones that you'll see someone like 18 or 19 that it's like, and now we're going to unbox this today, and we're going to show you how to do this, and then like it's in my mindset. I don't know if it's just a generation that you grew up with, but like if I'm doing a YouTube channel or whatever, I'm asking someone like, please like it, please share it, but I don't feel entitled to have to do that, but if you would, great. But I listen to some of the stuff that they watch, and it's like, I've noticed that 50 people didn't subscribe to my channel, and I'm just like, how do you
God.
get it 12 that 15 people didn't like? I'm like, shouldn't you be more worried about going outside and playing? And they're like, my Minecraft isn't always built up. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm so happy that when I was younger, it was literally like, turn on the TV, turn on Sharon, Lois and Bram, go around, sing and dance. And the best part about it was, even if you had embarrassing dance moves, no one knows about it. Because you know what? The VHS tapes, you can't dig them up. Now it's almost like someone can put up a TikTok video of them dancing, and they're like, oh my God, I delete that. It's like, too bad, it's trending now. It's like, oh. So I think you were right. You came along at the right time, like the right place. Sometimes things align like that. But tell me, when you're doing, of course, like these live shows, because that's something that we don't do now during COVID. I guess when you look back now, you're probably thankful that, hey, we actually get to do live shows, or we got to. Yep. Take me back to those days. Like, what things do you remember about the live shows? What things did you like, you miss?
Everything.
I mean,
the live shows,
COVID.
It's COVID is horrible. And the fact that people aren't supposed to sing, it feels like the ultimate tragedy. Live shows were, it was hard work. We traveled and we were away from home and our families, but you got on the stage and the love that came pouring at us was, it was just as good as it could be. It was wonderful. We loved doing that. And the energy from an audience, there's nothing quite like it. But, I also like doing other stuff. I loved recording. We loved recording. We loved doing TV. We were lucky. We had a multifaceted career. And even during this time, Randy is very aggressive about getting us to do, we did Facebook Live, and then we did other live performances, which it was so different to do them on Zoom, to do them. But, you do the best you can do under the circumstances you're living in.
We're looking for ways to connect with our audience still, and to also provide them with some respite and escape from the, crummy
hardship of right now.
Living in right now. So, my children and my boyfriend are very musical, and we are very lucky to be able as a family to make music together in safety and to share that. So for us, it's an elixir or an antidote to all of this. And the happy consequence of it is that it also is that way for people who enjoy the music of Sharon, Lois and Bram. So we get to continue to share it. And we're always looking for different platforms to do that. So we just ventured into TikTok this week. So this is a new platform for us, but we put a little video of I'm Slowly Going Crazy up there, and then we duetted that with Bram, and people seem to be really excited to see it. So that was a fun little thing to do.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know what? I feel like Randy doesn't get enough credit here because she's doing a lot of the marketing for you guys. Like, because like as much as
They give me credit.
as much as it's said, and I mean this with like no disrespect, but like, sometimes when things happen or trends happen, it's like some acts will be like, no, I'm not getting into that, and then you just lose track of them. They're gone. It's almost like a history book where, just say if you never went on Instagram, never used Facebook, you're like 10 years behind now per se. And then it's like, well, geez, now I have to play catch up all over again to get that fan base back, or to them to show like I'm still here. It's just that I wasn't on the platform that you all went to. So I think that's like good marketing.
Randi is terrific. She has a million ideas. If left to my own devices, I'd be sitting at a corner reading a book, or what I'm doing tonight, which is, by the way, baking a cake. It's the ingredients are all waiting for me to do the mixing and put it in the oven. So when we're done here, that's on the. But Randi encourages that too, because she knows her family will benefit from my baking cake.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the ones that like you'll have it done, and then they come over and be like, "Oh, thank you so much." It's like, could you save one for me? Could something? It's like, yeah, right. We saved you plenty last time. Remember? I like though that you mentioned, of course, about getting more kind of out there for people in this pandemic, because when we had Jeremy Fisher on earlier during the pandemic, he mentioned a really cool aspect that maybe you guys have kind of grown to like or didn't really get in a live performance kind of aspect. But he mentioned like his example, I think, was along the lines of, Brian, imagine if you're watching Sharon, Lois and Bram on TV back in like the 90s. I was like, okay. He's like, now imagine them actually talking to you back. I'm like, I'd be a little bit scared at first. I'd be thinking I'm going out of my mind. I'll be asking, what kind of cookies did my mom bake? But, I think that's what he was getting to, was almost like now with, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, all these things, there could be a child out there that would like literally wave at you, and you could wave back at them. They're like, oh my God, they just waved at me. Like we
do try to connect in that way. I mean, when we were doing the Facebook Lives, we could see the comments coming in, and occasionally we get an email from someone saying, it's my daughter's birthday. She's going through a particularly rough time right now. And a little shout out, made all the difference to them. We've transitioned over to virtual concerts where we do that on Zoom, and we actually get to see the audience. So we've been trying to do
wonderful.
Like, we did a Halloween concert, and we asked the kids and their families to dress up, and then we, featured them. They got to be the stars too. So. We're just doing everything we can to try and connect, since we can't connect in person right now.
Well, to kind of pose this as Sharon here, but like when you're doing these live concerts, of course, like you do get sometimes maybe a meet and greet with a child and their family, but like the live aspect to you, do you think, what's the best way to phrase this? Is it kind of like interesting or cool to you, like in real time now, that you get the reaction? Because I think of it as a way of, I can go to a Rascal Flatts concert and hold up a sign. I could be like 20 feet back, and they might see it and wave and be like, see you. And I'm like, okay, that's not really so personal. But if I go on a Zoom and I could make 20 comments, and then finally he says, I see you in Newfoundland. Thank you for like buying my CD. I'm like, okay, that feels a little bit more personal. So do you get that kind of aspect?
Well, there were many aspects of touring that did feel very personal. There were people who came for meet and greet, and also people waited for us after the shows. I mean, we would be, when we were touring in the States in particular, we'd be going out to the bus, and there'd be 100 people waiting at the stage door, at the backstage door. And we greeted people when if they waited, then we went, we walked around and shook hands and said hello as much as we could. And the thing is that what you got from the audience in a live show felt very, very connected. And people would call out things, and it just we felt connected. So the fact that we're able to do it through these Zoom concerts is really gratifying. I mean, at the end of our concerts, Randi sets us up so that we can say hello to the people who hang around after the show. We can see them and say hello to them one by one. Right, Rand?
Yep.
It's kind of interesting to me to bring back, I guess, a little bit of the Canadian tie. Maybe you guys don't see it as much as because maybe I kind of overthink things. But like when you're talking about touring the States, like did it ever dawn on you at times when you're touring, like we are a Canadian act and we are now in the States? Because it's basically when you make it in the States, it's like the sky's the limit. So when you got there, was there ever like even just mid show or after show going like, wow, like we came from Toronto and like all these people in like say Minnesota or Detroit or wherever are like they're here to see us. We like I know it sounds like kind of almost a little bit like not as equal, but in a way it's like we're Canadian and you guys are coming to see us. It's like almost vice versa in a lot of times where it's like I came down to see you.
The thing is that people in the United States came to see us because before that, all over Canada, people came to see us. We were accepted. We were loved. It was Canada. We always felt proud to be Canadian. I feel that way still. We always felt proud to be Canadian, and we knew that Canada set the standard for us. It gave us the opportunity. Mind you, when the Elephant Show went on Nickelodeon TV, our U.S. touring changed dramatically. And, you know, when we're in New Jersey singing to thousands of people, or Chicago at one of the outdoor venues singing to, or I remember we did a state fair. There were a state fair. There were about 10,000 people there. It was like, pinch me. Is this really happening?
Yeah.
I didn't think so much about, you know, we're Canadians and they're accepting us because, as I say, we felt very accepted and beloved in Canada.
By the same token, I mean, Lois was from Chicago, so for her to perform in her hometown for her family was extremely meaningful. And
absolutely.
For all of us, we were all huge fans of New York. You know, our family started visiting there when I was a young person. And so when Sharon, Lois and Bram got to perform on Broadway, that was another one of those amazing experiences. And also, I mean, we got to go to the UN General Assembly. I think that's the only time there's been a live music performance in there was the 50th anniversary of UNICEF when Sharon, Lois and Bram played inside the United Nations General Assembly. So there have been certain events that were those pinch me moments, like, wow, this is a really remarkable thing that we are getting to experience.
And isn't it good that I have Randi to remind me of, in case I forget any of these special moments? Those were pretty exceptional.
No, I think it's interesting because what I was going to mention off of your answer there was kind of like, and this might be like maybe the only time, or I'm sure this has never been said to you before of these people in this reference, but like I look at it from the standpoint of almost like with Garth Brooks when he went to New York, and you know it's country music, but I think the first time he went to New York and they had the idea of doing it outside, and I watched a documentary and his agent came to his room and Garth was like, don't tell me, like don't tell, because he was thinking the worst, like there's going to be 5 people outside, no one's going to care, and then he's like, no, Garth, like you should see it outside, it's blocked, and he couldn't believe it, and that's why like my mindset was for you guys, it's like I like how you put it in perspective, but as I grew older and I was like, okay, these guys are Canadian and they also broke into the States. And like, I'm figuring at some point when they see people coming back from the show, they're like pinch, like you said, like pinch me, this isn't real. But that was like what my first instinct was, is like when Garth Brooks said that. So, I mean, I'm kind of comparing you to Garth Brooks there in a sense of, so I feel like that's maybe the one time, or maybe someone else has said it in the past, but I feel like that's a big compliment to be compared to Garth Brooks. And the other thing that kind of brought to mind too was, you know, when you were mentioning about breaking into the States, I look at it in the aspect of, say, today, where you have the Wiggles and you see the Wiggles on Treehouse, and you have Canadians that when they come up to Edmonton, Toronto, and it kind of puts it in perspective as like, all right, like without Treehouse to show their program, we might not have known them. So it's like vice versa. Nickelodeon gave you kind of the platform of, it's like, hey, it's like, right, don't forget, we're here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk to you about too is like, now when you go on these concerts going all over the world per se, like, is there any particular moments you remember or like any kind of keepsakes that you'll think about every now and again? Like, I know for me, when I go to concerts, I like to go in the moment, but if there's something like a shirt that I'll take back, fine. I know with certain interviews, I'll look back at these like 20 years later and be like, I remember that clip. I remember that moment. Are there those kind of moments that still kind of hit you today?
Well, I can tell you when they were at the height of their touring, from time to time I would join them, and one of the things that they were really good at was finding the best places to eat in every town that they were performing in. So in Hawaii, we had a fabulous end of tour dinner.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we had all of us in Honolulu on the last night. I remember a huge long table with everyone from the tour having dinner together. In California, in New York, the first time I went to California, Lois knew of a special restaurant in Berkeley owned by Alice Water.
Oh, right.
We had a fabulous dinner there. I mean, just.
We were big. Lois was the one who found, I mean, she would find the restaurants, but we were big on end of tour dinners. We would always take the band and the crew and everybody out, and we'd have a big long table and have a really good eat. One of the guys who worked with us, Henry, years ago said, when you tour with Sharon, Lois and Bram, when you come back, people don't say, where did you play? They say, where did you eat?
Yeah.
So eating was a thing with us.
I feel like that's a good thing. I feel like that's like a kind of like an inside thing where it's like, like, okay, you toured with them, but where'd you eat? It's like, oh, we went to Pizza Hut. They must not like you that much. It's like
we didn't go to Pizza Hut.
The other thing I want to kind of get into a little bit with you, and it's a little bit touchy, but it's all depends on, I guess, your take of it. Is I know mental health has kind of become a big thing now with just in the world. A lot of people are a little bit more outspoken about it. Did you find at times when you were touring, like, because I know actually Emma from the Wiggles had mentioned at times when she was up in Canada that there were times when they were touring and she literally had to take like 5 or 10 minutes to talk to one of the others and be like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm just a little bit anxious. Did you ever have these moments when you're doing like going on stage?
No.
No.
How's that for an answer? No.
No. I
mean,
feel like the journalist in me really wants to say, I don't believe you. But at the same time, knowing that, like you said earlier, your guys are well established, you're mature, I feel like, yes, that sounds like a suitable answer.
Yeah. I mean, we loved what we did. Even when we were tired, the energy from the audience picked us right up. So there were not moments like that. There were times when people were thinking, gosh, I'd like to go home now because we were tired, but never when we were going on stage. No.
It's just another energy. It's like another second wave just coming to you. Like even if you did feel even if you did feel like a day before, like, oh my God, it's just as soon as you hear that crowd, you're like, no, I'm here. Let's do this.
Yeah. It's not a stigma thing. Sharon, Lois and Bram have always been open about, health challenges and those kinds of things. They've been very public about those sorts of things. And we have been honored to be interviewed by people around mental health challenges and everything like that. One of the things that I could say, having toured with them and spoken to a lot of their fans, is that I know that the music of Sharon, Lois and Bram has been an escape and a safe place, and that people who said that they've come from, hard and challenging family environments thanked Sharon, Lois and Bram for providing them with a place to escape
and take comfort.
Yeah. And, someone said to me, I learned how to be a parent watching Sharon, Lois and Bram on the Elephant Show, seeing how they talked to children and interacted with them. So, I feel like I'm very fortunate that I was raised in an environment where we were surrounded by loving parental figures who were healthy. Poo, poo, poo.
So I guess my last question for you is, when you look back at your career, all the things you've done, like the awards, touching all these children in the way that you've performed the songs and the parents, like, what exactly would you want people to remember as your legacy?
I think the most important thing, from my perspective, is that hopefully, because of our music, they've taken music into their lives, and that's a forever gift, really. If they've learned from us that they can own that music, that they can sing anytime, that it's always with them. So I think if our legacy is that people have received our music, taken it into their lives, and know that they can use it forever, that's about as good as I think it gets.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Sharon and Randi for coming on the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying thank you for listening and good night.